Record. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Tina Turner, take two, 2021, by Yvonne Howard, by the Amber Lewis. We are cousins by marriage. We found out last semester. It's very fun fact. So there you go. Fun fact for the day. Okay, Amber?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
No, you're fine. So the introduction of the Tina Turner movie starts with her song, Ask Me How I Feel. And I thought it was significant that they put that in there because the whole point of the documentary is to really give her side of view, what actually happened during her marriage, her divorce, and how she overcame that and about establishing and rebuilding her life. So it just kind of alludes and foreshadows what the documentary is about.
Okay. Jesus. Okay, so part one of the documentary basically just goes through and talks about how Tina became Tina. She never studied music. She met Ike when she was 17. They had like a brother-sister relationship, which then grew into more. She does admit that she was really young and naive when it came to Ike, so he could just talk her into doing everything. She only married him because they had a song that was doing pretty well on the charts, and she promised him that she would not leave him because he had wrote for other artists and they would always leave. Eventually, she became pregnant with their youngest, Ronnie, in 1960, and she told Ike she didn't want to travel to do shows, and that's when the sexual abuse started in their relationship. Ike would openly in front of their band and whatnot blame her for the abuse that he inflicted on her, and she would feel sorry for any abuse that he would put her through. So in a sense of matter, she kind of suffered from Stockholm syndrome. When she was in her younger 20s, she was approached by Phil Spector to record River Deep Mountain High. I'm going to play it a little low in the background. The song didn't chart in the US because Black stations felt like it was too white to play for their stations, and white stations felt like it was too Black to play on their stations. Spector also put out there that he didn't want Ike a part of any of the recording process, so Ike was not allowed to be there for it. He wasn't allowed to put his input in, which honestly kind of made him really upset, and he would go home and beat her even more. He would even downplay the song to her, say it didn't chart because it wasn't their type of music that they played. And in the beginning, there was love between Ike and Tina, but eventually, as their careers started to get a little bit higher, his drug use also got higher as well, which would then cause more abuse.
Okay, so the filming aspect of part one. So really throughout the entire documentary, not just part one, it partakes of participatory mode. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce that. But that's the mode it takes, mainly because the interviewers and the documentarians, they're engaging with the subjects. They're not just observing them. They're not really doing it in a poetic type of way, but they're just asking questions basically about her life for people that were during that time, her manager, herself, her husband, her friends, and they're asking what actually happened. And even though you never hear the interviewer, you do engage, they are engaging because they are answering the questions. And it does have a more narrative voice. And like I said, you're not getting the narrative voice of a person that, like, there's no sound in the film and they're just narrating it, but rather that of her friends, of herself, of her family, and that sound is laid over images throughout the entire video. So while someone is speaking, whether it's her or her husband or her friends, they're going back to images of the past of what happened. And so that's kind of how it's being narrative. And there are some performative aspects of the film. There's not too much. There is one aspect that's more performative that we'll dive into later. But yeah, and another thing I noticed is that the black and white footage of Ike and Tina is used throughout the film. And I don't know if that's just because it's footage from the 50s and the 60s and all of that, but it is constantly in black and white. And I thought maybe that was significant because things in black and white are usually considered old or dated or in the past. And I think that was intentional because her relationship with him is in the past, even though it keeps being brought up to her present. And so I thought it was a good idea for them to use the footage in that way to be representative of it being in the past. And also there's tapes from her 1981 interview where she sat down and gave her side of the story. And it's not just like a CD or just like a recording that's being shown, it's an actual tape recorder, as in dating the past, as in this is in the past because it's a tape recorder. We don't really see those nowadays. And so that was something that was significant to be shown in the film as well.
Part two of the film just goes through her family life. So her and Ike were living in Los Angeles, California in 1981, raising 4 sons, and they also had a housekeeper that was helping them raise those sons. 2 of the sons were Ike's children with his first wife, Lorraine. Their 3rd son was Tina's son with an unnamed saxophone player, and then their 4th was theirs, Ronnie. Craig, their oldest child, always stated that Tina was never around for most of their childhood, but she would make up for it anytime she did come back. She would be on the road 8 months out of the year, and they probably got to see her every 3 or 4 months, and they didn't get to spend a lot of time with her because as soon as she got home, she also had to leave so she could make money. And so that started to not only affect them, but also affected her, like physically and emotionally. She was more in love with being home with her children than she was on the road at the time. Plus, she was in an abusive marriage, so there wasn't much that she was getting. Her parents left when she was younger, and so she never really got the full paternal or maternal love that she was looking for. And she did not want her kids to ever grow up thinking that she didn't love him. In this video I'm going to play, it's her oldest son, Craig Turner, who passed away in 2018, going over an incident that happened between his parents and how that changed his view on Ike for the rest of his life. As it continues, Jesus. As it continues, Ike and Tina recorded and released Proud Mary in 1971. We all know what Proud Mary is. She started to treat her relationship with Ike as more as a friendship at this point in time. She was no longer feeling that there was any love between them. If anything, it was manipulation and just abuse. She tried to kill herself, which was very unsuccessful. And Ike believed it was because she did it out of attention and that she couldn't talk to him the way he thought she wanted to talk to him or anything like that. He explains that she was trying to be something that he wasn't trying to push her to be, which is a complete lie. But we know that, but he probably didn't believe that. She states that Buddhism, when she found it, helped her not be afraid of him anymore, which led to her leaving story. Basically, they were going to Dallas. They were in Dallas, Texas, and was 1976, I believe. And they were heading to the hotel because they were set to perform at a theater that night. And they got into a fight in the limo. This was the first time Tina ever fought back against Ike. And she wasn't going to put up with it anymore. So when they got to the hotel, she started rubbing his head, and then eventually she grabbed her suitcase and she left. What was funny about that was not only was she finding her freedom, but she got hit by a truck on the 4th of July, which is our national holiday of freedom. So she found that to be coincidental. Um, this clip here is just from the movie. It shows the limo fight and how she would explain it happened, but I don't think we have the time to play it for you. But if you would like a copy of this presentation, then we can always get it to you.
So the filming aspect of part two, in the beginning, like I said, Amber mentioned her children, and that there's images and videos of her children being played. They're playing with one another. She's with them. And there's happy music being played as well. And in the documentary, she also explains this is the only time that she felt happiness was with her children. So I thought they did a good job of playing that happy music with the children because it really sets the mood and sets the tone and conveys the feeling of happiness, and also at the same time somber because this was the only time she felt happy during that time period. And then also throughout this time, it shows pictures of Ike and Tina in contrast to the reality they actually lived. And throughout the movie, it shows these happy images of the both of them, videos where they're loving one another, they're doting on one another, but in reality, no, that wasn't the case. And I think it did that on purpose to show what the public believed in contrast to what was going on behind the scenes. We know now what actually happened, but I think they did that just to show, like I said, the contrast of the two. And this is what the media, the public, and everyone believed, but this wasn't what was actually happening. And actually, the video that Amber just showed of the bedroom, I thought this was a type of performative mode, and not that the whole entire documentary is, but just because there wasn't any actors or really improv in this scene, but because they took the time to get the camera and go throughout the house and show what Craig was talking about how I would take Tina in the back room just to give an imagery of what that really was. And so I think there's a performative aspect to that. So, yes.
Okay, part three is all about her comeback. She, in 1978, was doing an array of Las Vegas residencies. They were trying to get her anything she could to make money. She was raising 4 kids on her own. So she was doing TV shows, interviews, the residencies, any place that she could get booked, she was doing it. Roger Davies actually suggested that she change her hair and clothing to create a new look. She already wanted to feel like she was the queen of rock, so that's exactly what she did. John Carter, who was her manager that found her, he came to see her perform at a Las Vegas residency one night, and he fought for her to be signed at Capitol Records. Unfortunately, most of the A&R reps at Capitol Records were not too welcoming to a Black woman joining their lineup, and they called her some really, really bad slurs. Not to her face, but to just the two people there that were repping for her. And they were like, we'll give it a chance, but we don't really see her succeeding. She released What's Love Got to Do with It in 1984, which you can hear a little snippet of here. It hit #1 on the Billboard tracks. It also won Record of the Year, and her album Private Dancer sold 20 million copies. Better than any song she did with Ike during their years together. And honestly, it just shows that she was just willing to put the work in to get everything done, which is a very inspiring concept to me.
So there wasn't really much about this part three that was different from the last couple parts, but like I said, there was some more performative and recreated scenes where her escaping Ike and her leaving him. There was scenes where it showed the hotel, like a woman entering the hotel. It also showed a plane that she was getting on, and we obviously know this isn't taking place back then, so we know that this isn't actually what was happening, but they recreated that just to give the imagery of her story of how she escaped him. So there is a type of performative aspect. And then also there's a phone call between Capitol Records of John Carter and her manager, Roger Davies. And he didn't necessarily say it, but they're showing a phone, and they're showing the overlay, because they do have the audio of him speaking to her because it was recorded, and they're giving the audio of how he was explaining that Capitol Records don't want her because she was too old, and he relayed that they called her racial slurs, and they're just showing the phone call to show them the reality that this actually did happen between the two. And so those were some performative aspects in part 3.
Okay. And then we get to the story, which is where after Tina appeared in third Mad Max movie in 1985, Kurt Lauder approached her about writing a book, and she felt if she wrote the book that would get press to stop asking her about all the details of what happened between her and Ike. So she wrote the book and she allowed it to be published. It became a top New York's bestseller, which then became a movie. And till this day, she has not watched that movie, nor has she actually read the book in its entirely. But she did not want to relive all that hurt that she went through with Ike. So she didn't want to participate in any of it. In this clip here, we get to the point to where she's talking about how she's never felt love in her life. And the lady here in the video is actually her mother, who abandoned her when she was about 5 and didn't find her again until she was about 18, 19. So I'm just going to play that for you guys.
So the filling aspect of part 4, there is a significant part that I really personally thought was important. And so there's these cotton fields, and Tina Turner was actually raised on the cotton field, but I think the cotton fields are symbolic for 2 reasons. Mainly because she was on a cotton field when she was born, and that's where she was raised in the beginning of her life. So it's symbolic as to saying that's her past, but also as Americans, we understand the importance of cotton fields, that it's tied to slavery, it's tied to burden, and it's tied to bondage. And if Amber doesn't mind playing it, there's a great quote that is overplaying as the image is being shown on the screen. And basically what they said is that it brings you back to your past, that the trauma is so deep. If you don't address the wounds of your past, you continue to bleed. And like Amber said, this is basically because the media keeps on bringing up everything that happened with Ike. So it's like she has to relive this trauma every day, but at the same time, she's trying to heal and trying to move on forward with her life. So she's expressing this past trauma that she still has. So I think it was symbolic of them to put the cotton fields in there. And actually after this, there's a song by her, and we still have some time actually, so I guess we can play it. It's called Help. And she's basically, she says she's drowning, she's in a storm. Why is no one helping her during this time? And if you'll be able to hear a little bit of it. So there's these songs, Ask Me How I Feel, and Help, how during this time she's struggling and she wants someone to be there for her. And like Amber said, her mother didn't love her, her husband didn't love her, so she's had no one to rely on at this point. So she's kind of breaking down how she felt during all this time, that no one's really cared for her. And I think it was important for them to overlay that song as well, just to give more of an emphasis of how much sorrow and how much pain she went through during this time.
Why does it keep doing this to me? Okay. All right. Part 5 was all about love. She met Irvin Bach in the 80s. He is about 20 years younger than her. So she was about 50. He was 30, if I'm not mistaken. They hit it off really fast. You can tell by the pictures and whatnot. And I hate that we didn't include any, but we knew that this was on a time constraint. But when you see these pictures, you can honestly see how much chemistry these two had with each other, which is really inspiring. She said she wanted a man that could wear the trousers but not dominate her. So yeah, you can wear the pants around the house, but you're not going to tell me what to do. You're not going to be forceful about it. And she finally got the love from Irvin that she deserved so badly. And it was during this time that she's actually talking about, is when she goes to see the Tina Turner musical on Broadway, that she talks about how when she thinks of Ike, she doesn't always think of the bad times, because there were good times. And she honestly felt sorry for him. She believes deep down inside he didn't get the help that he needed. She felt like he was just a very sick individual. And if he had gotten the help that he was needing, then maybe they could have lasted. Maybe there was something that could have helped their relationship. But because of the drugs and the alcohol and wanting to be right and in control all the time, it pushed her away from him. And she was living what she called a life of death. And, to see that she met a man who not only really cared for her, but was willing to take care of her, it just shows how much you actually have to go through to find that true love in your life, like through heartbreak and all this and that. And she persevered, she fought through it, and she put it out there. She gave her heart another chance to find that love, and that's what she found. Her trip to come see the Tina Turner musical was her last trip here to the United States. She used that musical as a way to say farewell to her American fans. And they both live in Switzerland together to this day, and they're retired. And in a sense, this documentary was a close to everything that she's ever talked about. So she doesn't talk about Ike anymore. There's no reason to. She doesn't do music anymore. She's just happy and serene now. And as fans, we should be willing to offer her that without bringing back up her trauma every now and then.
Yeah, so the filming aspect of part 5 is that, so like, this is actually a picture of them. So they look very happy together. She looks very happy for once. And like, it was said in the last slide that this was a way of closure for her. And actually, this is the only time her husband, Erwin, kind of enters the scene throughout the film. He's actually an executive producer on it. He's actually in charge of a lot of things on it, but this is the first time he's sitting down and doing interviews himself. Mainly because I think the relationship was so publicized with her and Ike that their relationship, even though it's been in the 80s, they didn't get married, I think, until 2007, around that time. It was kind of more on the private side just because of all the publicity that she went through with him. And so kind of unveiling him to the very end. And this aspect, part 5, is in contrast to all the other aspects, because all the other aspects were kind of doom, kind of gloom, kind of somber, kind of sad because of everything that she's been through. But this aspect has a more warmth, it has a more heartfelt and light tone to it than all the other aspects, because she did get that love that she finally deserved. And at the end, there's a song, it's called The Best by Tina Turner, and she's talking about how she wants someone to love her and that she'll be the best and that they'll be the best for her. And this song is fitting to be the end because it's everything that she's wanted and that she deserves. And also the documentaries at the end, because this is the closer that she deserves. So is that the song that you have for it right there?
It's called The Best.
Yeah.
And actually, I have to correct you because I had to look it up because I wasn't sure myself. I don't remember a bunch. there's a 27-year gap between the two.
Oh yeah, yeah. Mhm.
And then they dated for about 30 years before they finally got married. And they got married in 2013 when she
Okay.
was like 67.
Yeah, so they were together for a long time. And so I think that's why, because I knew watching the documentary, I knew she was married, but I was like, why are they talking about her husband? Where's her husband? But then he finally comes in at the end, kind of showing a triumph of like, this is her life now. She finally has everything. And we also get to see their house, and it's very serene in Switzerland. They have like a lake by them, and it's very peaceful. And it also brings that same closure that the documentary gives. Like she's at peace with her life finally. So it ends on a very good note of them being together. So
I did not make a final slide, so unfortunately we have to end it here, but we do hope that you guys got some understanding of how Bill Nichols and his documentary modes work, using our documentary as an example. And also, I just want to say, just by watching this and it being assigned to me, I got to learn a lot more about Tina than what I already knew. And the details are even more heartbreaking as you get further into her story and you see how much the movie did. So I honestly am really thankful that I got to watch this. And it's definitely one I've been recommending to people for a long time now. So that's my final words on this. I hope we did this to your expectations greatly. If not, then I guess you'll let us know, Dr. Morton. And we're going to go from there. Yvonne, do you have anything else to say?
ditto. No, it was a really good documentary. I feel like everyone should watch it. She went through a lot, and so it kind of opens your eyes to what she really went through and how she kind of overcame it. And the documentary does a good job at explaining that, not only by giving her story, but by doing it film wise. So,
Exactly.
so
So I
thanks
guess
for watching. See you next time.